Okay. Cool, a nice big group of us. All right. So we're going to jump into it because it's just gone full. Firstly, just to introduce, I'm going to ask everyone just to give just a quick little insight into who you are and what you do. I'm going to lead off. My name's Adrian. I've been in the cultivation game for a while. These days I find myself with a number of different clients, working very much on the medical cannabis side of the spectrum, the regulated side. So what we're going to be talking today about is genetics, past, present and future. But I think there's going to be a lot of variety in the discussion because I think we've got quite a broad panel here of different experiences and different little niche corners of the industry. So we'll be talking about hemp, we're going to be talking about medical cannabis, and I think we'll have a lot of departure points off of that. So yeah, Josh, I'm going to ask you to just introduce yourself and we work this way.
Sure, my name is Josh. I'm sort of like a legal practitioner focusing on cannabis law since its genesis. So I've been very involved in the legislative process, like very active at Parliament with the sort of Independence Department. And what I'll be contributing to this conversation is the complexities around the non-listing of varieties. What does the listing process look like, and what are the consequences that we're sitting in today with the sort of inability to have our genetics listed? That's what it is.
Chris, my background is biochemistry and genetics. I was one of the founders of QURE, founding member of G-Gnome Gardens, which we looked at various genetics cultivation strategies, extraction methods. Been looking at hemp seed growing for the last year, which has been very different. And also started up the washroom, which has been more focusing on live rosin. We looked at a lot of genetics with like a pharmacy over the last year or so, trying to select for things for rosin production, different in-chain phenotypic traits, and yeah, that's been most of it.
My name is Atiyyah Ferouz. I'm the CEO and founder of Can Vitro. It is a genetic banking and tissue culture lab based in Thailand. We also do populate and viral testing. My background is in genetic engineering and biotechnology. So my first job in the cannabis industry was running one of Canada's first tissue culture labs at a medical cannabis company. And then, yeah, we do also tissue culture consulting as well under my consultancy. So we also help companies set up tissue culture labs. We've done it for several companies all over the world. So encouraging cultivators to bank their genetics. I always say, like, you know, pricing control as for saving your work after many, many years of hunting and spending all the time and effort into developing a genetic. We really promote growers trying to save those in their
Adrian, influence in South Africa. First listed cannabis company on the JC-WC. What I'm more known for is land-based preservation. So I do was the launch of the African G-Gnome project that's sitting around CSIR. That's kind of going nowhere to some degree. I'm now currently focused on my own genetics company that's kind of focusing on the marriage between land races and performance cultivars.
Fantastic. Okay, great guys. Actually, start off right there with land races. So, any of you, feel free to speak up, but Ben, I'm going to sort of throw this at you a little bit. Is there a future for our land races?
I think multiple levels. One, first, sovereignty, which we spoke about earlier. I think a lot of people, to some degree, might not understand where we are in South Africa with our South African land strains, especially with the kind of free trade, free for all of foreign genetic material coming into our shores, then being allowed to just openly proliferate and have the potential of cross-pollinating with a lot of our land races. So what we are essentially losing are these very, very unique cultivars across many provinces of South Africa. It's not limited to dominant coastal varieties. That I think we do need to protect. We also we need to somehow prevent the dilution of our land-based genes, the genome, but then also dealing with the complexities of the markets that one is exposed to now. One needs to have a specific insight into, what are the pluses of land leases, what are the dictates that might put it in loggerheads with high performance cultivation producers. Because, we are sometimes through GMP, EU GMP, we are kind of governed, to that 6 to 8 week flowering schedule. The turnaround, it's a kind of a race to the bottom. So land leases don't, whether 12 to 14 to 18 week flowering schedule might not necessarily fit into that. So I do see the need and hence the exploration of marrying these very unique secondary metabolites that are only found in these land leases, Due to modern scientific analysis now, we are picking up compounds that are found exclusively in these land leases, and a lot of what are being kind of missed through, commercialization. We be focusing always on, what is the best metric, to attain with certain breeding strategies. That we're losing the opportunities. So there needs to be a conversation of, one, we need to preserve them. I think we've done an excellent job with preserving quite a few of them, which we do have in a sort of a containment to some degree. But then the opportune time now for us to share with the global community this unique gene pool, and look, how do we offer the best medicine, to our patients, to our communities, because a lot of the crops steering, the genetic engineering, are causing a bottleneck within genetics, and that's kind of where we're losing a lot of the efficacy, is the right word that I'm using. That
Efficacy,
could be, efficacy. Maybe it's,
That English,
it's sometimes for me as a health practitioner, it's really my focus, because we need to give people a broad range of options, because that's the beauty of humanity. We're all different, because constitutionally made, very, very unique. What affects a woman doesn't necessarily affect a man in the same way. So I think cannabis genetics plays a critical role for us to share the information, but listen to what the industry is saying to us, that whether it's in the medical or whether it's in the talvage market, these are the things that are appealing to our nation. But then have this ability, like these platforms now, to share that knowledge openly so that we can learn from one another. What is unique that you have? What is unique that I have? Is there a way that we can share that? But then also somehow explore the ability to see what they do in those environments, because the dictates of genetics is, especially with animals, they've taken millennia to evolve to the point of where they are in their epigenetic signature. So when you just take a plant and you carry it all the way over into another environment, it's going to adapt, but it will still have the
It doesn't necessarily do what you need it to. I've seen this in Lesotho, taking some of the varieties that were grown traditionally by people in the hills, putting it into a facility, growing it alongside, let's say, more traditional, not traditional, but your more Western, let's say, cultivars, European and American cultivars. And the reality is that beautiful Lesotho variety, it wasn't anything to write home about. It didn't enjoy that style of cultivation. So, it's not something that you can just say, hey, we put that there and it's going to perform.
Yeah, and I think it's those, like I always say, cannabis has got a language. You strain from me as a language. It's a language that I think we need to sensitize ourselves, well, not as a community, but we need to go back to this custodianship, it's a responsibility where we have to pay attention to what she's saying to us, because I've had multiple conversations with international genetic companies about adopting their cultivars here. We grow them up, they perform nowhere near to what they perform overseas, you know. And then so like I'm of this opinion that for us, there's a hybrid model in between there that now will reveal itself, but it's asking us for that very personal relationship, never to lose, you know, in mass production, that language and that connection to the plant. From an indigenous perspective, that's a spiritual thing, that's a calling, I feel. So to translate that into EU, GMP,
Well, it's a road. Josh, I'm going to ask this one of you. In terms of, let's say, African land races, I'm not going to say just owned by South Africa. I know recently we've had some developments in South Africa where we're starting to have things like plant breeders' rights that we can apply to cannabis. How do you see the road forward for us to not only protect our land races, but also to be able to work with them? My personal belief on this, Ben, is that what we've got to do is we've got the genetics that we have here are amazing, but what we're missing is the decades of crop improvement that we've seen in other parts of agriculture. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that is where we have opportunity, huge opportunity with our land races. The land races in and of themselves, maybe not, certainly in the current dispensation that we have with an international trade, it's not a commercially viable thing. And although we're not saying we have to chase the money, it's a business. Yeah. You've got to have, you can't have the one without the other. So Josh, how do we go forward and not just throw this bounty to the wind?
So I think if we were to presuppose the Department of Agriculture or the ARC, the Agricultural Research Council, can actually do their job, then we've got a beautiful solution of, it's called, this term in legal terms is appellations. And an appellation, you make use of the designation of origin or geographic indicators to protect a certain product. So if you drink MCC from South Africa, you drink MCC, but you drink champagne from Champagne. That region of Champagne is protected. So just the word champagne then gets let's call it royalties. And the royalties will look like more sales because you won champagne from Champagne. We already have this law in South Africa, and it was actually recently tabled, mainly 2006, where you can make use of geographic indicators and designation of origin. Some examples will be QURE land. This will be the designation of origin that then you can charge a bit more for this land because it is from this region. And this for me solves, and this is rooted in the Nagoya Protocol, which is an international protocol that protects indigenous rights and particularly dealing with plants, which was then domesticated into our National Environment Management Act, so the Member Act. And this allows for benefit access schemes. And this is what protects legacy farmers. And what this looks like is you make use of geographic indicators, so the land race will be geographically specific to one region. And this is quite important to understand that this applies to outdoor cultivated cannabis. This will not apply to indoor cultivated cannabis because your geographic indicators are boasting things like the UV spectrum, the condition of the soil, and quite literally the cultivation methodology, touching the plants, talking to them, giving them that personal terpene profile that comes forward. And this geographic indicator can then slap on a little sticker, I'm a condor cannabis. Or we know SA oil, like olive oil, SA olive. This is the same thing. So here we see the whole olive oil industry then having a board of regulation that you only put that sticker on if the oil is safe for consumption. Similarly, you make then use of these managed a desk that is actually making sure that the product that was grown is actually grown from this region. It is then you list this variety, and this is where we're facing a major bottleneck. Some of you may know that the ARC has been sitting on listing SA Hemp 1 and SA Hemp 2 for over 10 years now. It's impossible that this is so long, but they realize the moment they list a variety, local seed production will be possible. And the consequences of this, they're not ready to let the horses out of the gate. This is why we're seeing them hold it back. But ultimately, as hemp farmers, and I'm using that term just so we understand industrial cultivated cannabis. I know it's a loaded term, but I'm using it as hemp. hemp that wants to be cultivated at this point, you need to import your seed from Europe that is compliant. That, I mean, we have a high threshold that even let's say 2% or 0.2% for the European model. You bring this in, and if you want to cultivate hemp outdoors, it has a rapid adaptability. So within 1 year, you can't propagate your own seeds because it will be deemed a hot crop. Because our UV is stronger here. We get more than 2 times as much sunlight hours in South Africa than what we do according to, in comparison to parts of Europe. They get 1,500 sunlight hours per year. We get over 3,500 sunlight hours. So this is more UV coming in. THC is a defense mechanism of the plant. So the THC goes up, hot crop. And then we become ball and chain to our European seed suppliers, not to mention that we're sitting on incredible landrace genetics, which, as you said, don't work on an indoor cultivated environment. That's fine. We don't want to write about that. We want to be able to grow seeds scattered in old growing methodologies, like we've seen in the Amapondo region, and then be able to utilize these genetics. The problem is that the THC is around, let's say, 5 to 7% in some landrace strains. Could be higher, but this then falls under the Medicines Act, because this THC is the scheduled substance. So we need to be able to farm under the hemp regime, namely outdoors, but with an exemption on your THC levels. And this has been considered by the minister to grant a hemp permit. And I know that it was coming from the ICQSA that they were looking at this indigenous hemp permit or something of this nature. And this was going to then turn a blind eye to the THC levels. There have been recent legal developments that has shown the inclination of the Department of Agriculture to allow for hemp to be grown, or for cannabis to be grown regardless of its THC threshold. And this is a very positive movement. It hasn't been codified into law yet, but just to sort of bring this all together, if we can you make use of your geographic, your regions, to list your variety. You can have a Durban poison, but it's grown in one specific region, so that region is what gets protected. You list that variety as that community. You allow for that variety to be taken overseas and used in labs all over and grown on indoors or whatever, but there will be a little percentage that gets paid back. If it's 10% on total revenue or something to this nature, that gets paid back into a trust for that community and then disseminated into the community through educational trust funds. And this is what happened, the precedent with Lipton and Rooibos in Clanwilliam, exactly the same thing. Lipton had to pay out millions to the Khoisan community because they were using a Khoisan plant, and this is based on the Nagoya Protocol and the National Environment Management Act. So the solutions are all here. We don't need to change any laws. We just need the ARC to list our varieties. And this is where the bottlenecks start, because until seeds are listed, until a variety is listed, you cannot sell seeds locally, and that is bizarre. And that's what I say.
Okay. Chris, I'm going to ask you this one. Working with our land races in terms of crop improvement and that sort of thing, do you see that there is a way forward with that? Can we do something with our local land races that would make enough of an impact internationally that people would want to be growing these things?
With the land race, I see it as a few various things. The one is what traits we want to take from that land race. The second thing is, does that land race have economic viability for that trait that it's selected for? And then, can you actually grow it to scale? Because I mean, some plants, they don't do well in certain environments. They may do well in their niche pocket, but not somewhere else. So, from Tijman's research alone, he was I think he was from Dutch, he did his master's or PhD. He went to all of the farmers in local landrace regions and he interviewed all the farmers. And he asked the farmers, do you guys actually want to keep what you're growing? None of the farmers wanted to keep what they're growing. They don't have any sale for the product. There's no competitive advantage, and they're sitting with stuff molding in their huts. So what's the point for a farmer to keep the land race? There is no point. So in that sense now, what is the value of the land race? It's in their specific genetic traits. And for a land race farmer, he may not be able to breed that into something that's competitive for his sales market. But as a researcher, there's a high amount of value in that. So India, for instance, is probably one of the best examples on how landrace saved their food supplies. So they had a monocrop of rice, they had a lot of tsunami, the monsoon came in, and they lost their major rice stock. So what they did was they started outbreeding with the local land races of rice, and they created over 150 or 170 different varieties. They're so stable with their genetic variability now that monsoons, droughts, anything, their crop could continue. So I see it now in the sense, as Brother Ben was saying, unique molecules, certain selective traits, bank the genetics, use it to breed with our existing genetics to maybe improve powder mildew resistance, you know. If you look at some of the indoor genetics that have beautiful flowers, they've got very poor root development. If you look at landrace grasses, for instance, like your kookaburra and things like that, they've got very shallow roots. But if you go into any rural area, the long fluffy grass, their roots are a lot deeper. So those plants are drought resistant naturally. So if you apply that same concept to landrace, they would have those advantages. So what traits are you selecting it for? Where are you applying it to what end chain purpose? I mean, hemp, for instance, breeding with the landrace for drought selection would make a lot more sense than for an indoor farmer to breed for drought selection. So where and what blocks are you using for which elements? And for me, you know, genetically characterizing those blocks on a, you know, genomic level, see where the indels lie, the various ATGC sequences, and then if you could, some people insertion deletion or just breeding into it.
I think consciousness of like end use is important.
Yeah.
What do you want to use this genetic for?
Yes,
And work back from there, and then you design your crop accordingly and go forward with that. End use is really, because it's also has a big bearing on the regulation side of things. Are you looking to build walls or like make people hide? And if you're looking to build walls, then don't even put a fence around your property. Like we see grape being grown with no fence around the property, and they have removed this requirement, right? But ultimately, what are you doing this for? It should be dictating your path going back.
And you'd be surprised how quickly people understand that it is hemp. I mean, I'm working in a site right now that's in Atlantis, right next to a squatter camp. And the whole community knows that it's hemp, and nobody breaks in. There's nothing that's
So Atiyyah, as the only non-South African on our panel, and I know you work quite extensively in the international medical cannabis field. What is the international medical market looking for in terms of something different, or are we still very much looking for your traditional high THC, good yielding, that sort of thing? Or do you think there is a bit of a gap, an opportunity for unique cultivars to be well developed? I'm not going to say grown, because I think we'd all agree that we can't grow the existing cultivars as they are, but is there something out there for us to be aiming for, or is this something that we're going to have to create ourselves?
We've had a few people ask us if land races are something that we think are viable. The answer is no, not right
Okay.
now, because you have to understand that the medical market, is very heavily driven by consumers. So
Yeah.
this is what I talked about on my panel just before this, but when you just legalize medical, that you basically have a recreational market masquerading as a medical market. And so we have people who just want to get, not everybody of course, but they want to get really, really high potency strains. You know, big California brands are extremely popular in medical, which is very odd. You know, why is a California brand so popular if you're actually a true medical patient? It's clearly a lot of recreational users who've moved into the medical market. And so we as an industry, of course, a lot of us are like, well, I've been using cannabis for 20 years. I don't really need to smoke 35% THC flower. I don't usually buy that. I actually like a 1-to-1, which is like a 10 to 12% on both. Do you know what part of that is to find?
Yeah.
You can't find it anywhere. There's like 1 or 2 brands out of the 700 companies in Canada that even make anything below 20% THC. When I buy cannabis and broker like multi-ton deals, that every single client asks the same thing. And what are you looking for? And every single client says the exact same thing. 24% plus. If it's 22, they won't even take it or they want a discount. It was 20, went to 22, now it's 24. Clients will pay extra if it's over 30, 32, 35. And that's what everybody wants right now. So the medical market is extremely potency focused. Nothing else really matters. We are seeing a bit of an increase in terpenes. The challenge with terpenes that's also a bit ridiculous is that you can't even list terpenes on medical products in certain markets like Germany. It's against the law. So the buyer, if they're more cannabis like knowledgeable or they smoke cannabis, they come and they smell things and they want to buy them, then they buy them because they're high terpene. And the patients don't get educated on that at all. So a lot of medical markets have no interest in educating patients. They themselves don't know what to tell them or what to educate them on. And so we live in a really consumer-led market. We have a very undereducated consumer population. They follow trends they see on social media as to what they think is good cannabis. They have no real understanding or grasp or concept of what they should be using. And that is what is driving this really intense race for high potency. And I'm really against really high potency cultivars because there's multiple studies that show they increase like risk of psychosis and severe mental health issues, and no one really talks about that. Like, it's not like the governments, when you buy a high potency product, I've seen some governments saying they may start slapping on labels that say it's a psychosis risk on them to try to push the consumers into buying lower potency products. So I think that land races would be fantastic. I'd love to see more of them. But as you brought up, they take a longer time to cultivate. So if you're a commercial cultivator, you've now cut down, you're doing 4 to 5 turns a year, you're now doing 3 turns a year.
Yeah.
And so from a commercial perspective alone, they become more difficult. And so I think outdoor grown landrace makes the most sense, because typically you only have one growing season in many climates anyways, so it doesn't matter if it's a bit longer or shorter. You're doing one crop, basically. Outdoors in Canada is one crop a year, that's it. You might have some photo periods run in parallel, or on flowers run in parallel with photo periods, but mostly it's one harvest. And so I think that I could see there being a market for landrace in the next 3 to 5 years, but the amount of education that has to happen in the market is really the holdup. There's nothing wrong with landrace flower. I mean, one of the strains that I really love is in Thailand, and it is a grower that is a commercial grower there, and they found seeds on the side of the road in North Thailand. They decided to grow them. And it doesn't have a name, actually, there's no name, but it looks nothing like what you think cannabis looks like now.
Yes.
The structure doesn't have that like little tight cone. It looks like a bar of soap, actually. And it is so heavy that it broke the grow tables they were growing on the first time they ran it. They had grow tables that cracked in half. The biomass was so aggressive. It's only about 12% THC, but when I smoke that, the full body feeling is amazing. It's so good. And I also think that when, if more users could experience that, you still feel really high. Like, you still feel high at 10% if it's got good terpene expression on it, right? It's not just the cannabinoids that get you high. Otherwise, you wouldn't have so many cultivars. Why would you not just have one cultivar, 120, 122, 124? It's the full thing that's happening. And so there's just a really, really big lack of education in the market. We're working with quite a few groups to help them preserve land races, to get them into tissue culture. The benefit of that is allowing us to then transport them quite easily and then do breeding, So some people say they want to take land race strains and they want to breed them so they're higher potency. I just don't think that really makes any sense. I think that we should try to keep the strains as much as possible, work on the education. Changing people's minds who are consumers is going to be faster, in my opinion, than fighting with lawmakers in many cases. And I think that being able to have each country develop a line of genetics that's land-race and helping consumers understand why that's beneficial and why they should pay a reasonable price point for that product is a path forward that we could be looking at.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. As we move forward, I would agree with you, the cannabis industry at the moment, certainly my insight into it, we're still a relatively young industry. There are certainly some of us who have been familiar with cannabis, and it's been whatever you want to call it, a plant ally for me personally for a good many years. However, as we open this up, and it's becoming more acceptable internationally, nationally, wherever you are, how does that education look? I'm going to throw this out to everyone, put your hand up if you want to answer it, but how does that education look? How do we get people to move past just, hey, I want to get fixed, I want to get high? I mean, Virtual's got that thing, we heard that a lot today, about why lie to get high. Personally, to me, there really should be, it's a bit of an elephant in the room, maybe not so much in this room, but in the general cannabis room, where, let's take Canada as an example. We had Canada 2001, they allowed medical cannabis for the first time. As soon as recreational adult use cannabis came on the table, the numbers of medical users dropped to something like 10%. I don't know the exact figures, maybe Atiyyah would know them better, but the numbers dropped simply because people could actually be honest about what they're doing. Okay, so where are we going with internationally and nationally in South Africa? Where are we going with this? Where a medical product can be truly treated as a medical product, and the stuff that's going for people to enjoy I prefer the term adult use, but recreational, because recreational just sounds like we're driving down the highway at 150 k's an hour.
Responsible adult use.
Responsible adult use. Where are we going with this?
Recreational, alcohol is recreational. I
Yeah.
never get that. I don't mind the term.
Also, don't forget about irresponsible adult use as well.
But yeah. If I just want to get baked on a Saturday, which is what I do, my ideal Saturday, I get up, I go to the gym, I come back, I smoke for an hour, I make a huge breakfast, I take a shower, and then I sleep for 3 to 4 hours.
The
That's
word
my perfect
recreational
Saturday.
tends to make the prohibitionists glitch a little bit. They're like, ugh.
You see, I think
You know?
there needs to be that separation, and the main importance of that point of separation is not the consumer, it's the dispensing agents. And the reason I say that is because a bud tender doesn't understand the intricacies of cancer, and a doctor doesn't need to see somebody coming to get their daily smoke.
Exactly.
So for that reason alone, we need separation. In my mind.
Yeah, and I think to unpack this issue around, what makes you high? Is it the use of the substance or the setting that you create by using the substance? And that for me, this just speaks to the importance of preserving these land assets. Stellenbosch University just came out recently with a paper to prove that there are very, very unique flavor alkaloids, exclusively only found in the leaves of our cannabis. That is determinant again on your camera, your microbes that are sitting in your rhizosphere that specifically create those secondary metabolites. So we're moving away from the traditional thinking that the higher THC there is, the higher you're going to get. This is for me, as a member of the Rastafari community, the sensitivities around our sacrament, why we stick and we prefer to lower THC, because we're starting to see the impact on our community. And we are a faith-based community, similar to the indigenous community, Khoisan, where there is no fear of our younger family members, community members now to gravitate towards cannabis usage because it's now legal. But I'm very hesitant, to ignore the fact of this burgeoning extracts market, that is now sitting with 90% THC products, and the government is still trying to say that they are, there's this war on, what we call it the apartheid of cannabinoids. Is it the actual cannabinoids that causes one to elevate in consciousness? Does it give us an opportunity now to really map out our genome and see exactly, work with our educational research institutions to see exactly what happens in the clinical setting, because now with the previous subject we were dealing with psychedelics, the impact on the mind. But I mean, we're in a society where we're using products every day that has an impact on the mind and we don't even realize it. So putting it into that whole melting pot of what could possibly be making us high, to me, sitting like you on a Saturday and having, a coffee and a view in front of me, I'm tripping my head off, compared to somebody that is caught up in a 9 to 5, 6-day-a-week call center, and their definition of high is something different to me. But by human nature, we do tend to gravitate towards chaos, and that's kind of like our own nature, we need to look at very introspectively, because we are all unique, we are all different, so we can't have this one shoe size that fits everybody. We need to be sharing these global discussions, because at the end of the day, we're still one human family. What works in Thailand for Atiyyah, what works on the west coast of America, those are the pluses. But like what Kristin is alluding to, these very, very unique agronomic traits, like mold resistance. Those are relative, very, very important characteristics within the breeding world. For us, there's a big difference between breeders and cultivators. Cultivator does not have the luxury that I have to play around with strains. That guy is on a schedule, and he cannot step out of that schedule. But we have to look at these markets and what the markets are evolving. It's an ever-changing, evolving marketplace. And when I say that medically as well as recreationally, Germany, the biggest market at the moment, you're not going to enter into the door without anything over 26% THC. But I'm sitting with your 1-to-1 strain. That's the strain I prefer. My actual strain I prefer is a 5-to-1 CBD to THC, because it's more closer to my local landers that I've grown with all my life, which is almost 40 years of cannabis smoking. And I always say this, it's an important factor to always be in touch with this inner landscape and language, because you need to somehow impart the importance of why we are unique, you know, but then also at the same time try and get the best product out there, but in this balanced approach of these different percentages of cannabinoids, terpenes, sesquiterpenes, triterpenes, you know. I don't think we need to shepherd them, you know, into the different sectors where we might be losing the ability to marry these all together, and then allowing them to be shared, you know, and in that sharing, where they land, because this is the fact of the genome, it's traveled the entire world. What is hemp today, Chinese hemp today, has got fantastic seeds the size of sweet peas, you know. You don't find that in our land races, you know. So I'm going to be stupid to say no to these cultivars that now can be immensely beneficial to me, because you know, we're dealing with a seed oil that's high in essential fatty acids, your omega-3, 6, and 9 group. To me, if I'm cannabinoidly deficient, you know, by me taking a tablespoon of hemp seed oil or cannabis seed oil, essential fatty acids now changes my biochemistry within. Just that simple tablespoon now might do something for my brain. Inosine protein is the one, globulin inosine protein is the only building block that rebuilds our nervous system. The biggest killer today is adrenal fatigue, which we all suffer with to some degree. You know, so a simple thing like taking hemp seed oil, cannabis seed oil, to me, it's going to make me high, but high on a different level.
Well, that comes down to your definition of high, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So coming back to what we see on the global market at the moment, and when I say the global market, I'm talking specifically now about the medical cannabis scene, because that is the reality of what is tradable, what is business out there. And we do have to balance where we see the future and the potential of the future and the reality of where we are today. My understanding and what I've worked with, just in terms of my actual work that I do, is often strains, cultivars of cannabis that are coming from a relatively limited gene pool. Okay. Obviously, let's use the term legacy, it's a bit of a buzzword, but it's as good as any of the other ones out there. We come from this legacy thing where we actually have a relatively small gene pool that has been sort of moved around the world, whether it's coming out of Cali or Canada or out of the coffee shop model that we had, maybe it's a bit dated by now. I personally work with farms where guys are paying in the region of $5,000, $6,000 US just for buying a genetic. There's no guarantee on that. There's nothing. The only guarantee is we're going to send you this thing and we'll give you some cultivation data, and it's been tested clean of things like HLVD and that sort of stuff. But that's it, okay? Which, again, no judgment, no problem with that, okay? But do we see that there's a broader way? To me, it's a little bit limited on one level. On the other side, we've got, because it's come out of this legacy space, where you haven't had the same checks and controls that you've had in, let's say, traditional formal agriculture. You know, you've had, if you like, real mavericks out there that have come up with some really interesting stuff, okay? However, we've got now, okay, maybe not quite exactly that we're on the brink of it, but we've got the last however many decades of agricultural technology that hasn't been applied to cannabis, whether that's in the hemp space, the adult use space, the medical space, whatever, okay? I'm going to throw that out, guys. Where do you see this going? Marker-assisted breeding, breeding up from different genetics.
So
Yeah?
ideally, 15 years from now, you can see it starting in the States now. You want to get to a space where you've genetically mapped your patients, so you understand. So next generation sequencing, thankfully, has advanced us quite a lot now. We can look at advanced genetic models. It's not just a snapshot on that sequence, we can look at the whole code. So now that you can look at the whole code, you can understand the code, where the errors in the code. You can now obviously do the same to the plant, and you can start making linkages as to what molecular signatures in the plant, chemotypes, would trade then onto what disease types, and you can start making linkages between those. But the challenge with that is two things. First, you're going to need a lot of data to drive that study. The second thing is, at what point will the consumer be at the stage that they can afford to actually partake in the data? So, for instance, if you look at the next level pharmacogenetics models now, you can have a pharmacopoeia tied to genetic elements. So I can take your gene sequence and I can understand exactly what concentration of Panado would work best for you as an individual. So people have launched businesses about 3-4 years ago, and they put about 40 million into the project, and it mothballed. Simply because the consumer population size wasn't big enough for them to actually afford the product. So, and you see that in a lot of industries where companies close, because the consumer demand, the technology is there, it's not cheap enough to be mass produced. So that's where I see it being in the next 15 years. But until the various models allow us to actually play in that space, it's difficult to develop enough data to be.
And do you think that this is a time thing, or do you think it's
definitely time? Because I mean, if we're looking at 5 or 6 years ago, I used next generation sequencing for my masters.
Yeah.
And for me to run 4 samples cost the Department of Agriculture 250K.
Wow.
We're already at the point now that that same sample set would probably cost about 100. So you can see the cost decreasing. We need that to be at about 2-3 grand for somebody on the streets to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
So I mean, even if you look at cannabis products, you get certain live hash rosin does well in C point because the consumer market can afford it. In observatory, people aren't prepared to pay more than 250 rand. You go to Joburg, your average consumer sales must be 80 rand in certain places. So that same model, you need to fit it with the right market. So America, it will do well there because their consumers are a little bit more educated on patient healthcare. Japan, it would probably do very well because they're at the point that the toilets tell you if you've got cancer. So it's just, where is your consumer niche, and can they afford the IP for that?
I'm going to put a few questions out here, absolutely. I think we've got, well, we're quarter to 5 now, and I know there's Steve is going to be online at 5, so let's try and give another 10 more minutes.
Good.
Mr. Prince.
Thanks, Adrian. I'm just wondering, bearing in mind the conundrum that land-based farmers are currently facing, nobody's buying our product. As Rastafari, we say that cannabis is a tree of life, and we've always advocated that the focus should not just be on smoking, actually, but growing land-raised varieties for industrial purposes, and having these farmers grow cannabis in order to provide within the housing need, within the textile need, alternative plastics, biodiesel, fuel for the bodies.
The challenge there is, people have looked at that, but the amount of labour that the farmer needs to put in to develop that bundle of herb for a kilo, relative to the price for that kilo, it doesn't really benefit the farmer that much. I don't know if you were involved in those projects at all, where that one river that they were crossing all the time with Simon and whatnot, they carried the herd all the way over. And it didn't become economically viable for the farmers. They were making rands and cents.
Yeah, but
so that's where, in a sense, even speaking to Simon, ideally, the only way I see saving land race for rural communities, and it's very difficult because large-scale farmers of the quality, and I mean, live rosin, you can get that white live rosin. A rural farmer, he extract a lot more biomass. So if you look at the relative ratios in his oil, he's got a high percentage of terpenes, and that could be a really exciting point. But that means then that the consumer needs to be smart enough to understand the price point on that. They don't see it as a cheap good because it's a lot extracted into something small. It's at 6-7% average. But then your terpenes almost at 50-50, at least 30% terps, because you have to do so much. Same thing with cheese. I mean, cheese, because it's 18 to 20% THC, We've done winter runs on cheese, and we've got up to 14% terpenes on live ash rosin, which is very good. Mostly, as you're saying, at like 8%, but because we have to isolate a lot more. So then you need to see that that low value product is actually almost like a, what do you call it? Connoisseur product, as opposed to landrace.
But the industrial cannabis wasn't looked at properly as industrial cannabis. It was to go and collect the stuff. No value was added to it properly. There wasn't an industry to take it. So industrial cannabis. No, Afri-Hemp, that was a joke, man. Afri-Hemp went in there, tried to, and everybody had an uneducated price point they wanted for their product. If the industry doesn't exist, surely we need to talk to people and create the industry and say, we're going to start cheap. The more you grow, the better you grow, you'll make better.
But now
what we often, so it's industrial, because I think everybody is so focused on the flower instead of just the whole plant. Because if you're taking the whole plant, you're giving value to all different aspects of it. That will be the real value.
But
it's not, you're not going to make the money like you're selling down here in Sea Point.
In terms of economic
but if you're getting no money, when you only rely on a government grant, that's the only income coming to you. Surely
but that's where us
a well-structured industry will go into those areas and create actual generational wealth, because the better you grow, the bigger your plants get, the more you know how to harvest your seeds, you do your spacing right. It's all education. So what you do from one thing is not a final.
That's where the government comes in. That's where the government is.
Because like now, if Afri-Hemp is taking, say, a fiber length, that's what they're looking for, or a specific herd composition. But on that, does the landrace produce enough herd? If you outbreed it with something that is more competitive, that's what we want. Because I don't see that as a crop as a competitive economical crop. So that's the challenge. And it's not that they can grow that, but could we give them something better to grow? I think that's the argument. That's where we need to
I kind of think, I hear what Kristin is saying, and I hear what the reality is with the rural peoples in the Eastern Cape, because it's part of our community. The thing that I maybe want to introduce in the discussion is then, what is actual real value, And when you're looking at the region, you've got to look at it from multiple levels. You need to look at it from the farmer's perspective, and then also where does that farmer fit into our, in terms of South African agriculture. The thing that we're dealing with as a nation is our dependence on energy. If you look at it in the global space of what's currently happening with the demands of energy and the cost of energy production, shouldn't it be a healthier conversation for us to then have the discussion around what we've always championed, the biofuel discussion, because this is the power of the plant. Within the stems, a byproduct, which is a waste stream. It's our zero waste model that we had with the government quite a while ago. To say that this, in terms of today's agriculture, is kind of future-proofing our agriculture, the production of agriculture, but it cannot be put into the same, like I always refer to this, the saying that you cannot put cannabis, which is a new emerging industry, into the same old skin of the current agricultural model. We have these massive, large commercial farmers, sitting in a percentage where majority of our good agricultural land is dictated by their needs and their exclusivity. Do we have a healthy discussion as a nation in terms of our sovereignty? Are we then so dependent on this energy producer that is ESCOM? Can we start having a discussion of, a tonnage we're talking about every single year of land races being dumped into the Nzumbubu River that just goes to waste. That could be recapitalized in terms of the country's first test pilot project on what is the viability of our land races to produce ethanol as a byproduct from the processing of ethylene out of the stems. Then there's the actual biodiesel that is derived from the actual seed. And then look at is it feasible, in comparative to our other commodity production in agriculture. And then there's also the fact of our food security issue. You cannot expect like a large part of our rural peoples just to be focusing on cannabis. When every night there is, Gogo Tata sitting there and he's more concerned about his plate of food.
Well, exactly. I think you're talking about some real human issues here. One is exactly that people need to have an ability to live day to day. Whether you're talking about the subsistence farmer in the Kai or the big rural, the big Free State farmer with his massive combine harvesters and tractors, at the end of the day, it's a pure economic thing. It doesn't matter what scale you're talking about. Farming is number one, it's a risky gamble, the best of times. And number two, it's got to make economic sense. We've been talking till the cows come home. At the end of the day, if you do not have the ability to operate next season, you're out of the game.
And that's the thing.
And that's big guys and small guys.
Yeah, and for us as a province, like being where we are, the Western Cape, this is what we know. We've done the research. Hemp for us, the specific genetic is water intensive.
Yeah.
And so like I say, like the Western Cape farmers are not going to be pro hemp. They're going to maybe say, I'm pro a genetic that makes financial sense to me as a farmer in the Western Cape.
Correct.
Because if my 25% water tax now completely annihilates my bottom line there, then it's a no-brainer, just like talking cheese.
Throw one, I think Cobus, you had a question.
Maybe just some insights from the ground. So I'm very happy to hear the conversations and wanted to bring your attention to the Department of Agriculture's got a heritage grower program that's running at the moment. They are supporting legacy growers, identifying land races in those areas. We're currently busy with a project in Northwest where the profiling has been done and where the further research and development into commercialization with CSIR. So if you're not aware, please contact your local Department of Agriculture. There is a program. Then there's a new rollout happening at the moment of the Land Race Protection and Reintroduction Program, where seed bank from 1948 to 72 that was kept during that time is being reintroduced to the communities where the seeds were taken from.
Amazing.
At those projects, the idea is to set up nurseries. It's in a funding phase at the moment. So there are where the African Farmers Association, Cannabis Commodity, is trying to push it from that level with the Farmers Association and to try raise funding for it. But the project is run by the African Cultural Heritage Trust, because the main focus of this is not just to reintroduce these land races taken from the communities, but also help identify the land races that are there and explore all commercial opportunities with these genetics. So I think it's exactly what all of us are saying, but there are some practical examples. Then land races for fiber, we are doing it. We've done a trial, there's a pilot that we completed. Few partners, Truus Foschini Group made a hemp that they, according to their specs, blended 70 cotton, 30 hemp. But that stuff was processed by locally built South African machines going to farms in the Limpopo province, Northwest and Eastern Cape, doing primary decortication there, combing it. And to talk about the numbers, the Pretoria project we just concluded yielded 150,000 Rand per hectare fiber only.
Wow.
This is all indigenous, it's all land races. I'm happy Josh spoke about the appellations. That's
I learned that from you, man.
I'm so excited about that. So everything that we gather data, we're also trying to start mapping these appellations. And that's an open opportunity for any research institution to join in. How do we define these things? How do we make an African brand for our different appellations? Because I've seen it, I've touched it, I've worn the textiles. It is possible. And there are legal ways to do it, because when you get an exemption for your THC, you only need to supply a COA to show that there's no THC in this biomass. We grow it 100 days, we cut it before it flowers, and we get to use for that specific purpose the highest quality fiber we can get is what we're trying to get out of it. That's not stopping us from saving the better seeds, from collecting that data, and then through things like this land race reintroduction program, exploring those benefits of getting those seeds registered. You don't have to wait for some sort anymore. Agriculture's opened their doors. The registration happens under the Plant Improvement Act, and it's being fast-tracked. So it's happening.
Amazing.
Fantastic. Can I ask you a question there, Cobus? You talk about 150,000 revenue per hectare. What is the cost to plant it?
30K. So if you
Amazing.
So 30 is what we worked on now, using contractors, scoping it out with external contractors, working from virgin land, not prepped before, works out to about 30, and that's what it costs.
And that also then, I mean, that filters down into communities, and that's what I've said for ages, is that hemp, and I love medical cannabis, don't get me wrong, it's my bread and butter, but hemp has got the ability to actually impact this country on a very rural, basic level, providing jobs and the ability for communities to actually thrive.
Tree and agricultural practice.
And then the last is, the biotextiles also. There's a company, Saltus Pods in Pretoria. You can order your flat pack tiny home made from hemp fiber, infused with resin. You might have to wait a little bit because I have to be here and we can't be growing the hemp, but it's happening. So the channels have opened up. We can now go back to the farmers that we've aggregated. We can give them some proper offtake agreements. And next season is going to be a complete different program.
Can I just
Fantastic. One more question at the back. Thank you.
Yeah, so we got land, Knoffelstraal, this mountainous land, so I can utilize that because I have the power to do that. The other chiefs are going to do that now. But now we don't have, firstly, it's not the lease land. It's just land that we are using for years now. But no one came and registered us. Like the government said they don't want to be involved with us, etc., etc. Obviously, for obvious reasons. But now we're utilizing farming and stuff like that. But we can do that. And also, what we want to do is utilize that area for making bricks to build the kraal because people is using old materials and stuff like that. So if someone can help us with that, yeah, thank you very much.
Can I just add something to Kova's there? Just something to bear in mind with, with dealing with government, especially like your club model. So the non-profit model, there's going to be a conflict dealing with procurement, because NPCs, PBOs cannot do business with government. So our suggestion, as far back as we are with CDC, CIDC-WC, we always say that, the cooperative structure, primary cooperatives relative to the farmers, then primaries form with secondaries. And that's how you have now an ability to impact on procurement to government services.
So this is, I just want to say, government has the ability to play a market maker role through public procurement.
Yeah.
So if you're buying prison uniforms, making hemp uniforms, prison beds, prison blankets, the prisons, all out of hemp. So this would need to be a so-called hemp first procurement policy, which we don't have. But before the government is buying anything, tables, cars, biodiesel cars, there needs to be a consideration. Can we do this in hemp? If yes, we do it in hemp. If not, buy from the normal market. Government needs to be, government's not here. It's a far cry. We're talking echo chambers. The government needs to be marketing.
Okay, guys.